Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Hey, Dana. We are sitting side by side today. You took your jacket off so we don't match anymore.
I did. I got a little hot in here.
So I'm excited today because as our guest, we have Mr. Tony DiCello,
Woo!
who has been, we were just talking about you, Tony, yesterday, how we were bragging about the big building you own that you've never seen. That was the first thing we said.
Wait, he's never been here?
He's never been here to see this amazing. We were talking about how beautiful this building is and how you've never been here to see it. And then the second thing we said is, we love Tony. He's changed our life massively from when we first met him. So Tony's one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. So Mr. Tony DiCello, been touted as the world's best real estate coach, right? So welcome, Tony.
And Tony, thank you for always listening. He always listens to our podcast.
Oh, yes. And being a big listener. Thank you, Tony. We appreciate you.
Right.
So kind of give us, I always like to say, Tony, you were born and then what happened? Cliff Note version, of course. Especially because I know your age.
This has got to be a really short version.
Because I was at your birthday party.
Yeah. So here, I grew up in Wisconsin, went to school there, and eventually moved to Colorado to do a real estate project for the people I was partners with in Madison, Wisconsin. Ended up selling real estate there for 25 years, got into coaching around 2000, and been a real estate coach since then. We're with Keller Williams. We are partners in 6 market centers and 4 regions.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Now, Tony, I've never asked you this, but I can't remember. You were the person that told Howard Britton about Jimmy and I to get us interviewed. And you might have even been the person that told Mike Ferry about us to get us invited to the only one thing he ever paid for your way to go there. I don't think he's ever done anything since. It did not turn out well. I think you got kicked out of the meeting because you'd done the recording of someone else.
Tony did?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Tony.
So did a few other of my dear friends that would become my dear friends. But I'm just curious, do you remember how you even heard about us or how we met? Was it a Mike Ferry thing and then you told Howard?
Yeah, it was a Mike Ferry thing.
Okay.
That was a special event he did at the Marriott across from Fashion Island.
Yes.
And it was a free day, and Mike just invited certain people. And then we went to dinner on the Balboa Peninsula. And then we started with that Saturday and haven't stopped since then. We went and bought presents, and I went rollerblading.
Yes. Well, and the moral of this story is if you find somebody that you admire, you take them to dinner, you rollerblade with them, you ask them to the movie, and if they'll let you, sleep in their room to learn everything they know already, which we didn't get to sleep in your room. Thank you, Tony, for not letting us do that. But we would have because you were someone that we looked up on stage and said, oh, my gosh, he made $600,000. And back then, Tony, that was like unheard of in commissions. It just was unheard of. And we happened to be $600,000 in debt. That's why we were so attracted to your number.
Wow.
But So tell us a little bit about what have you learned from coaching some of the best people in the country? I mean, some of your people that you've coached do thousands of transactions now, right?
Yeah.
One of the questions I have is, what did they do? Back then, what we were doing was top 0.25% in sales. Are they doing different things today? Or are they just doing more of them and they're doing them more with leverage? What's the big difference? Just out of curiosity, just because that question came to me.
Good question.
It's real simple. They're if you look at the triangle, they just get more leads to get more listings and leverage all of that more.
Yeah.
It's the same real estate done with more people.
Yep.
So true.
And everybody's looking for the magic pill. The magic pill is leverage and multiplication.
So true. Now, I can't remember. I know I was the first person in my city to have an assistant because I had gone and listened to people on a panel. I don't remember. What did your team look like? And you were one of the first people that I ever heard of in the real estate business to sell your real estate practice. And it be like an asset. Did you have leverage back then or no? I can't remember.
Yeah. So basically, I was selling about 45 deals, and I figured I couldn't get any higher because I needed help. So then there were two of us that split an assistant. I had her in the morning, he had her in the afternoon. Then he didn't want her anymore, so I got a full-time assistant. And I was listening to a Mike Ferry tape because 1989, I figured, you know what? This is too much work for the money I'm making. So I got to figure out a way to make more money in the same amount of time. And I was listening to a Mike Ferry tape, and he was interviewing a guy by the name of Ron Rush, who was a top realtor. And remember Rush from?
I do.
He was from DC, and he said he had two assistants, and I went, 2 assistants? I thought that was the greatest idea in the whole world. So within a week, I had a part-time assistant, so I had 1.5. And we went to about 90 closings. Then I had dinner with Rick DeLuca because he was in Denver, and I said, anybody meeting you for dinner? And he said, no. I said, I'll take you to dinner. So he told me about this thing called a buyer's agent. And I went, oh, I never have to work another buyer. Hired another buyer, sold my car, bought a Porsche so I could never put another buyer in my car again.
There was no room.
And my buyer's agent, this was 1990, did 53 deals his first year.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
And so by then we had 2 assistants, and it just kind of grew from there.
Tony, one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot is that a lot of the agents nowadays just aren't thinking big enough. Like they are just not thinking big enough, and likely because no one's challenging them to think bigger. Have you seen that in a lot of the top agents that you're coaching? And will you talk a little bit about that, about thinking bigger?
Well, I think the thing of it is, you guys do it in your region. The thing of it is, we just got to get people to think at another level. So when I got into real estate in 1975, if you did 25 closings, you got a plaque, a parking space, and everything else. Then it just happened to be that I just started coaching top agents, and they just started thinking bigger. And I'm going, well, if you're thinking bigger, then my job as your coach is to have you think bigger than bigger. So I just created that through the questions I'd ask them. Like one week, I asked all my clients, what would you have to do to take 100 listings in a month? Well, they're taking 20 or 30. Well, let's not go to 50. Let's give them a number that scares the hell out of them, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
And so I said, what would you have to do to do 100? And most thought I was crazy because they said, well, that's 5 times what I'm doing, or that's 4 times what I'm doing. I said, I know, but let's figure it out. We can get there. We don't have to get there tomorrow. So what's your best month? And then kind of say, okay, what would we have to do to double that month? And for some people, it took a little while. Some people, it was a shorter time. But here's the thing. I'm doing 30 listings. My goal is to get to 100. Well, what happens in the process of getting to 100? I have to take 40.
Yeah, you get closer and
closer to 30.
40. Then, okay, well, you did 40. Let's see if we can do 50 or 60. So I had a client, it wasn't a client, he just worked with him, but he fell short of the 100, but he went from taking, say, 180 listings in a quarter to taking 240 listings in a quarter. Before he got the 300 listings in a quarter, he fell short at 290. Well, when he started this whole thing, that was 110 listings a month ago.
Wow.
So you can't let people have small goals. So I just kept thinking, challenge them in every area. So pick a month, pick a number, and let's figure it out. I mean, you sat in the room when you heard about having $100,000 day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We used to have $100,000 months, and somebody said, well, why don't you just I had $100,000 day. It was called the key day, because that's the guy that did 100,000. Well, pretty soon you're going 200,000. And then if you play a game called Beat Your Best, if your best month was 25,000, your whole goal is to get a bigger month and a bigger month and a bigger month. You interviewed Laura Gillot.
Yeah.
Laura was from a town of how many people?
Not a lot. 20,
Not a lot. 13 to 15,000.
Less than 20,000.
And she was in my mastermind group, and I challenged them to have 100 listings. She called me up a few years later, like 3 years later, and said, I just wanted to let you know I took 100 listings.
In February.
Well, in February. If somebody can take 100 listings in a town of 15,000, tell me why you live in Columbus and you can't take 100 listings in a month. In fact, if you live in a town of 25,000, what's your reason for not taking 100 listings in a month?
Yeah.
So true.
So you have to have these conversations that constantly stretch their minds.
You know, that is what you're good at, Tony, because I remember exactly where I was. I was outside running. I was listening to a tape that you were interviewed on, and you said, I think this was maybe something you were doing at the time. And I went home and immediately did it. And you said, what if you listed a house and sold a house? My goal is to list a house and sell a house every single day.
Every day.
So I went and got a yearly calendar. And if I listed 2 houses, I was much stronger at listing than the buyer. So I would circle 2 days and I'd say, okay, I got 2 days covered. And then if we put houses under contract, I'd circle 2 or 3 more days. And so I did that. And I always tell the group, you know, I had never thought about it like that. And if I just thought about getting up every day and listing a house or selling a house every single day, what would that do? And it took a good 10 years, but eventually got to that.
Yeah. And so here's what you think. I want to do 60 closings. And we get lost in 60 closings. Well, what is 60 closings? 60 closings is 5 a month, correct?
Yep.
How many days in a month? 30.
30 times 31.
5 divided into 30 is 6. So if I'm going to sell 60 houses, I need to have a closing every 6 days. That's what it boils down to. Now all I'm looking at is 6 days to get a closing. Well, just like starting in the business, you got to get up to where you have a closing in 6 days. And then you get to that point. These guys, you know, I've got one client that I used to have that they have to put a house under contract every 45 minutes.
Wow.
So those big teams are putting houses under contract every hour.
Gosh, that's a big aha, though, is everybody that's listening should know what their number, is it every 45 minutes? Is it every 6 days? Depending on what their goals are. Because that's really good to think about.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So you don't get lost in 60 deals. You don't get lost in 60 listens. It's just like Linda's calendar. That you look at it every day. And here's the thing. When you're looking at it every day, you know where you are every minute of every day.
Yeah.
So you know whether you're ahead or behind.
Yep.
And if you only look at your goals once a month, even if you just look at them once a week, it's not enough if you have to do a deal every 6 days.
Yeah. I remember one time I heard Gary say, you can have a bad day and you can have a bad week, but you can't have a bad month in real estate. And in order to avoid that, you have to look at your stuff every day, because if you can make up for a bad day or for a bad week, but if you have a bad month, then how hard is it? I mean, you're far behind at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But think about that, Dana. For these guys that have to do 1 every hour, you can't have a bad day.
Yeah.
Because if you're only doing 4, that means you got to get 12 under contract tomorrow.
Yep.
So the bigger the number, the faster you go underwater.
Yeah. So, Tony, can we switch gears for 1 second and go to the market that we're in and that we're entering in?
Yep.
Because if somebody's listening right now and they're thinking, well, there's no way that I can do that. We're getting ready. We're already in a shift. We just saw today on our call listings taken, I think it was down 36%, somewhere in the high 30s. And you've sold through and coached through many downturns and shifts. So where do you think we are, and what's your predictions? I always like to ask everybody.
And then what would you tell people to do based on it?
Yeah.
So my prediction is nothing's changed.
Mm.
You gave me the wrong number, Dana.
Which
What
number?
You said the market is what?
Are you talking about listings taken?
Yeah.
Down
No,
36%.
you said the market's down 36%, right?
I think they said listings taken are down 36%.
Listings taken are down 36%. So the real number is 64% of listings are still available.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do I get my unfair share of the 64%? The whole realtors are talking about what's down. Nobody's talking about what's left.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's so true.
Yep.
So true.
So
more than your goals is still out there available.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
If I only need to take, if it's down 60%, how many listings do you take in a year? If you take 10,000, there's still 6,400 listings left. My goal is to take 100 listings. So how do I get 100 listings out of the 6,400 that are being taken?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Everybody's talking about what's down. Nobody's talking about what's up or what's left.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So true.
Yeah, that's so good.
So
Yeah.
I have an old shift book. What does it say at the top?
It's not about the market.
It's about what you do.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
want to
that's
shift in the market? It's not about the market. It's about what you do. Stop talking about the market and go to work.
So true.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, Tony, why do you think some people have a harder time thinking bigger? Are they wired that way? Do you think they have the capability of thinking bigger? They just don't have a big enough have to. What do you think makes a difference between somebody who wakes up and says, "Yep, I'm going to think bigger, and therefore I'm going to achieve bigger"?
So what does Gary say about the 5 people around us?
Oh yeah, how important they are.
Yep.
Yep.
So who are those people usually? The people that don't think bigger hanging around with people that
Don't think bigger. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
See, if you really think this thing through, every question we have, 2 books have the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
In your market center, are you talking to people that are selling a lot of houses, or are you talking to people that aren't selling any houses?
Mm-hmm.
So true.
And I don't think, as we did those calls, I don't think the market centers are thinking big enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if there are teams in this company that do more than a market center, then what's wrong with the market centers?
Mm-hmm.
They're not thinking big enough.
That's exactly right. Every market center should say, you know what? Let's do $1 billion in transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? So
You know,
if there's 6,400 listings left in what market you were talking about, the question is, how do we get all 6,400? Well, that's not. We say that's not possible, but how many places have you seen that have, 30-40% market share?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Laura Gillot alone has, 50% market share.
Yeah.
Well, she lives in a small town. Well, what's Columbus made up of? If you took Columbus and dropped it into 15,000 pieces, 15,000 houses per piece, you would just have a bunch of Laura Gillot around all over Columbus or all over Indianapolis or all over Cincinnati. True. And somebody would just be controlling those 15,000 people.
That's a good point you make, Tony, because the McKissick Group used to have 51% market share. And what's interesting is the only difference is we were thinking bigger, and then the market began to catch up. Mm-hmm. And instead, as a top producer, you got to still now go be even thinking bigger because the market catches up, the competition catches up, the whatever. And so you can't just think big one time. You got to keep thinking bigger all the time.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. the top agents I coached, one of the things I did is I made them think. I had to block out 15 minutes in their calendar to a half hour to think about bigger.
Mm.
So the question may be, how do we increase our market share by 10%? And it was the guy that lives in Solana Beach, Brian Tracy.
Oh yeah.
He called it brainstorming, or no, he didn't call it brainstorming. He said, write down 20 answers to the question. And so the first 10 would be easy, the next 5 would be harder, and the next 5 would be harder. But the last 5 somewhere will probably be out of the box.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you come up with this idea.
Well, then, Gary did that originally years ago. That's how the MREA book came out.
Asking everybody, right?
Well, they sat in a room and they said, what are the biggest ideas? And they probably had about 20 of them. And as they got to it, they looked at it, and for Gary to write the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, was the one thing that would make the biggest difference. That's exactly the process that they followed to do that.
Yep. And you figured it out. He showed how to do 2.4 million. All you needed is 1,980 people in your database. Well, today that number is 13,000.
13,000. Yeah. Big
so
difference.
Tell me why you can't make $1 million.
Yeah.
A database of 13,000 people. You touch them 50, 60, 70, 8,500 times a year. You become proficient at your scripts. And I'm sitting in on some calls in some of the market centers that are doing role play, and I'm going, you're not going to get listings with those kinds of scripts. You're not going to get appointments with those kinds of scripts. So, Linda, how many times have you said this is a skill-based market in the last 3 months?
Oh, almost daily. Yeah. Daily.
At nauseam.
Daily. And we've got to take, they've got to take it on. And they've got to take it on for more than 10 minutes. They got to get so good that they can be better than anybody else.
Really, Tony, Dan's new book that's coming out is called 10X is Better, Easier Than 2X. And I was interviewed for the book. And one of the things that I said is, I think a lot of the problem is people think how hard it was to 2X their business. And they think 10X must be way harder. And the truth is, the 2X is the harder. To get your business to 2X itself is way harder than if you think bigger and get it to 10X. But because we mentally remember how difficult it was to get our business to the 2X, we think the 10X is just going to be impossible.
Right. And that is brought about because what kind of thinking do we have?
2X thinking.
I have to do everything. I have to do everything.
Yeah.
They forget that it's leverage. Well, I'm the only one that can do it. Linda, in the 16 years that Brad ran your business, how many listing appointments did you go on in those 16 years?
No, none. Because the goal was, it was either going to be his job or mine, and I preferred it to be his.
That's exactly right. So in those 16 years, he probably did 4,000 closings. And you and Jimmy went on none.
Right.
So
my favorite way.
Here's what agents don't do. They don't start thinking like a business person soon enough. But here's what you do. You build your business to a certain level, then you go away for 1 week and never call the office. And what you come back to is a business where you know where every hole is.
Yeah.
So true.
Then you fix the holes. And you help Brad, you help Brad. And one day you woke up and going, he can go on his own, make his own mistakes. You wanted him to be like you when he needed to be like Brad. And you finally let him be like Brad. And what happened?
Yep.
You never had to go on another appointment.
Yep. So true.
So we have to think that way. We forget it's leverage. I'm telling you, 25 transactions is way harder than 2,500 transactions.
Mm-hmm. So true. So true.
Because you do everything.
Yeah, that's so true.
Well, let's say this. 225 is better, easier than 250. 25 is 2 minutes. Let's leave it at that. Because once you cross 50, level 2 kicks in. Once you cross 75 to 100, level 3 kicks in. When you're doing, now you're adding salespeople, so now you're doing less sales. And suddenly you're doing a level 4 and you're doing 150 closings. And when you're level 7, you're doing nothing except picking up your check and still guiding the direction, and you're not going on any appointments.
Yeah.
I bought a Porsche because I knew I couldn't get a couple in a Porsche. I never had to put
up. Couldn't get their kids
in. So couldn't
get their kids in there, right?
But exactly right. I showed one buyer because he wanted to buy a $4 million house in 1991, and that was a pretty big deal. And he only worked with me, and I'd accommodate him. But other $1 million properties, nope.
Yeah.
It's the buyer's agent's job to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hire the right people, then your confidence that they'll put together a deal no matter what size is okay. I just wanted to be honest, the $4 million commission was of more interest.
Yeah. Well, you weigh your options. At least you had options. That's true.
And then you switch
that's the thing. Linda, if you do it correctly, you do have options.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But after you leave buyers, you don't have much inclination to really put another buyer in your car.
Never.
Ladies, how many of you would volunteer to put a buyer in your car tomorrow?
No.
Okay. No volunteers on this call.
None. No. I remember too, then they start liking them better anyway. Like you have all this fear about they're not gonna like them because they don't like you. And I remember, I think like Sarah's first year, she started working with our buyers. She got invited to like 3 or 4 birthday parties for the kids that were clients, and she would post pictures and I would be like, well, they didn't invite me to that, and she'd be like, oh no, yeah, they just invited me.
That's so funny.
I'd be like, well, but that's good. I mean, you want to get to that point where they like them better.
Yeah.
Yep.
You felt bad for like 10 minutes and you're like, okay,
then I'm like,
this
no,
is
I'm
great.
over it.
Yeah.
So Tony, as we wrap up here, what would be, coaching all the thousands of top agents, what would be the top 2 or 3 things you would tell anybody that's listening that are, systems or ideas or things that you've learned from coaching so many people over the years?
Okay. One is you got to get most of your business out of a database. They got to build a big enough database.
Yep.
And here's the thing. Your competition has databases. The people in the Gary group, I bet you there's not many people in there that have a database smaller than 50 to 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if those people are controlling 100,000 minds and there's 100 of them, that's 10 million minds they're controlling. So get to a point where you're building a database of 3 to 10,000 people. Be so skilled that you convert 90% to 95% of your listing appointments.
Mm-hmm.
Be so skilled you can get an appointment in calling well, first of all, touch your database a lot so that when you call them, you're going to get referrals. And then if you're in the open market doing FSBOs, expireds, that type of stuff, be so skilled that you can get an appointment every 10 or 15 calls.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing is run it like a business. Hire your first hire and let your hire everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You get out of hiring because most realtors are terrible at hiring. They hire people like themselves. Yeah. So use the KPR or KPA.
Mm-hmm.
Use all the tools we've got to find the right people.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: you're looking for 2 things. First, you're looking, do they fit your culture? And if they don't fit your culture, move on.
Yeah.
Once you find people that fit your culture, then find people that can do the job using KPA. Patrick Lincioni has a new thing called now the 6
The Working Genius. It's so
The
good.
Six Working Genius, yeah, the Six Working Genius. We
Yeah, so good.
saw his presentation and got the book, and Diana just did that last week with the people, her assistants.
Yeah.
And we found out that we were treating one assistant a little off, and we gave her a little bit more leeway. And it's interesting what happened in like 2 or 3 days. The results of her work changed because we gave her a little leeway to do it a little bit her way within the system.
Yeah.
So run it like a business, have a big database, and be skilled. You know what? That's it. And then everything is just multiplication.
Yeah.
Or more leverage, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Love that.
Love it. Well, as usual, Tony, you're a quiet man, but when you open your mouth, it's brilliance.
Well, thank you.
Tony's teaching for my market centers in February on Zoom too, so I can't wait.
That's awesome.
He was like I think the top 3 most requested. Everybody's like, we want to hear from Tony and Linda.
Yep.
And
awesome.
Gary. I'm like, I don't know if I can get Gary, but I can get Tony and Linda.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Tony, we thank you. We appreciate you.
My pleasure.
And as usual, you've got a lot of wisdom up there, and we appreciate you sharing it with us.
Yes. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was great to be with you.
And now I'm going to let Jimmy go fishing with you.
Okay.
All right. Love you. See you.
I love you. Talk to you guys soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Remember, if you have not hit subscribe, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you can think of anyone that would benefit from these conversations, be sure and pass this podcast along. And we will be looking forward to our next great guest like Tony. Yep. And if you have a challenge, an opportunity, or a topic you would like for us to cover on the podcast, reach out to us at info@everything life and real estate. Remember, we're going for those 500 5-star reviews, and we're getting close. Yep. So help us out there. And Dana, I'll see you next week, and I'm sure we'll have some other great guests.
Sounds good. See you then.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.